what are some other ways we could do that?
Mhm.
How do we lean into difficult experiences and mine from them a kind of gold that could be useful? We've talked a lot about acceptance. Excuse me. We've talked about acceptance and sharing our feelings. Um, Another thought that occurs to me is that struggling with difficult losses like this could be an opportunity for us to reflect on what we really want in life, on what really matters to us in the end of the day.
Yeah, I think what you're speaking to, David, in some sense is, meaning making, right? Yes, we all experience all these, heartaches and difficult, circumstances, right? But what kind of meaning do we take away from these experiences? How is it connected to something, perhaps larger and wider and broader than our own lived experience, right? How does it help us to sort of recalibrate, right, what our values are, what really matters to us? I think the other sort of concept that you're speaking about, David, is this idea of growth mindset, right? That adversity and difficulties and challenges are opportunities for us to grow, whether that be in the spirit of, deepening our values or reconnecting with our values, or just learning how to address things differently the next time that we might encounter them. Right? I think that's an important, attitude to try to adopt, right? Rather than pushing away, failures or unrealized expectations, and categorizing them as, negative experiences, to really reframe them as opportunities for learning and growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so encouraging that that our students may be able to take from this that the flexibility and the resiliency that they're building could be incredibly helpful for their pursuits later on. And it's nice too to be able to engage in some forward thinking. It's so natural to feel stuck in where we are now, especially when it's shrouded by uncertainty. But I do think, and this is something that I'm starting to hear in my conversations with students, I do hear this narrative change to, okay, there's going to be things that I can take from this that are going to help me in the long term.
One definition of resilience that I like a lot is how quickly you get up after you fall down. I think that really is a helpful idea. I've met people sometimes and, oh, hi, how are you? And we start talking and then within a few minutes they're talking about something that happened maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and they're still complaining about it, or they're still disappointed by it or angry about it. And they've been hooked some way by that experience so that they haven't been able to move forward and learn from it. And other people, sometimes you meet and something bad has happened, and gosh, almost with blinking their eyes, they're back up on their feet looking for a way to go forward. So that growth mindset, I think, really helps in the process of leaning into the experience, because it empowers us, really. Right. It allows us to take advantage of the experience and build a strength that can be very, very helpful.
The other strategy that might the other cognitive or sort of mental strategy that might help us be more capable with leaning into our experience is really trying to avoid what I sort of call all or nothing or black and white thinking. Right? This idea, for example, that we will always be in control of everything in our lives, right? Or that life is always linear and predictable. Those are extreme sort of absolute ways of thinking, right? And I think we need to allow for a little bit more gray into our thinking. That perhaps instead of saying, I will always be in control, or I should always be in control, that we allow this possibility that there might be some things that are not within our control, right? There may be some things that are uncertain in our lives, and that's okay, right? And in fact, it may even be opportunities for us to grow and to better ourselves, and to deepen our sense of values and spirituality, right?
We do like that feeling of control, don't we? We really love
it.
that feeling of certainty, like I don't have to worry, this is going to be a particular way. And black and white thinking almost reinforces an illusion,
Hmm.
that this is always going to be a certain way. And unfortunately, it just doesn't work out like that.
Yeah, and certainty and predictability are, in the truest sense of the word, really, really illusions, right? I mean, we like to hold on to it, but I think that's the challenge of like radically accepting the unpredictability that comes with life and with living.
I'm really fond of uh, a sentence that I guess came out of Viktor Frankl's work in the concentration camps, which is this the fact that the people in the camps who were able to cope with everything were able to transform that question, why me, into what is this situation asking of me?
Hmm.
That seems to me like a very empowering question. What is this situation asking of me? Um, how am I being invited to grow or to respond or to reflect on my reactions to things? How am I being asked to accept what's taking place?
Hmm.
Doesn't mean that it happens easily or smoothly. Uh, it doesn't mean that it happens right away. I think it takes a lot of time. Sometimes it may take, months or even years to
Hmm.
find an answer to that question. But it seems to me like it's a very helpful question when we're faced with incredibly difficult things.
Right.
I find this so helpful as someone trying to consider how I can best support these students that we care so deeply about. And I think what I'm hearing is that we can be partners in this expansion of mindsets, and development of additional coping skills. It's interesting. I hadn't thought about it before, but a lot of uncertainty and sadness would have been the case anyway as
Hmm.
you go into this time of year, but there's so much kinship and so much joy that surrounds the experience, and I wonder if there's things that I can do to help my students continue to grow and to think in the ways that we're talking about. And I think I can be a partner to them in the same way that we are encouraging family members to do. I'm so curious, Jeff, have you heard any of this in your work with students? Like, are they starting to develop a different mindset about this experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think our students, as diverse as they are all at different places.
Yeah.
There are some that are unfortunately just struggling and trying to figure out how to survive right now, and then there are those who have been able to shift more into the mode of a growth mindset, right? Of how they can make meaning of and sublimate some of the experiences that they're experiencing right now. Um, I bring up that word sublimation in part because of what David was sharing earlier about Viktor Frankl's work, right? That in the world of psychology, there's a defense mechanism that's considered a really healthy defense mechanism against painful and difficult feelings called sublimation. And essentially what sublimation is sort of translating, right, those experiences into something that's sort of productive and societally and personally meaningful in our lives. And as David said earlier, it could take years. It's a goal and an aspiration for much of the work of psychotherapy. And so, yeah, students are at that place, some of them, and some of them are not. And, we're doing our best in our office, with our therapists and counselors to really meet students where they're at. And I think that's critically important too. While I think we all recognize the value of learning and growing and evolving as a result of these painful experiences, we also have to meet students where they're at, right? Because before there can be growth and movement, there has to be acceptance and recognition of where we are at in the moment. And in some ways, that's the sort of radical acceptance of the situation and how we're situated in that situation.
Talked about so many things today, and I guess centered around the idea of acceptance and the ways to accept what happens in our lives rather than to push the experiences away. And one of the insights that can help us grow is really leaning into the phrase you used, Jeff, I thought was so helpful, leaning into the experience instead of resisting it. That a lot of our suffering happens when we try and push things away and we can't accept them as they are. So as we're coming to a close, it occurred to me that it's probably worth developing the ability to trust things as they're happening, that there's an inner purpose, an inner logic, an inner meaning that may not be visible to us in our lives, that the more deeply we can trust the events that are unfolding, the feelings we have, the relationships where we take refuge, that in time we begin to see the deep rivers that are nurturing and calling us. So I think that's my reflection as we draw to a close. Before we do, Rachel or Jeff, do you have any last thoughts to share with us?
David, I so appreciate that you ended with the word nurturing, and I think this is an experience that as the loved ones of our students, we can be nurturing and serve as guides to them as they grow and develop from this process, and hopefully it will indeed lead to a sense of resiliency that'll be so helpful to them going forward. And so I thank folks for taking the time to listen to us and let us be a part of your thinking and your family.
You know, I feel the same way as you, David and Rachel. I'm just extraordinarily grateful to have the opportunity to speak with all of you, and in many ways, even more grateful to have the opportunities to work with and to nourish your children. They are such a blessing in our lives, and you know, we are so appreciative to be able to work with them. The only thing that I'll add to what you, David and Rachel, already shared is that, you know, as we're sort of striving to move into a place of acceptance and sublimation, I think we need to be kind to ourselves along the way. You know, even as we aspire to practice, you know, all of these, you know, amazing, you know, tools and skills that we're referring to, there's going to be bumps in the road. There's going to be hiccups. We may not always be accepting as we might want to be. But we have to accept that too, right? That it won't always be linear and seamless. And I think that's important to remember for ourselves and for our children.